Hello, and welcome to Keep the Channel Open, a podcast featuring conversations about art, literature, and creativity. My name is Mike Sakasagawa, and today's guest is Rizzhel Javier. Hello, everyone. Today's episode is the last one of 2020, and I'm happy to be revisiting my 2017 conversation with artist Rizzhel Javier. Rizzhel Javier is a San Diego-based artist and educator. Her work explores topics in identity, memory, culture, and human relationships. As a first-generation Filipino-American, Rizzhel uses her art practice to dissect her identity and that of the larger Filipino-American community through the research and creation of art projects. Her art is grounded in social practice with the intent to engage the public and build a dialogue on topics that are often difficult to discuss or understand. For Rizzhel, art is a way for people to build communication skills and a sense of community. Rizzhel has exhibited nationally at Arena One Gallery in Santa Monica, California, and internationally at Tijuana Institute of Technology and Centro Estatal de las Artes Tijuana, Baja California. An exhibition Round Trip took place on a 757 Boeing airplane on the Tijuana Institute of Technology campus, where she installed sculptures embroidered with phrases of what people say to each other when they say goodbye. She uses multiple languages in her work to emphasize the separation as a universal experience and prevalent in the mass commuter city of San Diego and Tijuana. It is her goal to make art accessible to the public, to underrepresented communities, and those needing a safe space for dialogue. Since we recorded our conversation, Rizzhel has joined the Aja Project as the managing director. The Aja Project is a community arts education organization here in San Diego, founded in 2000. And the name Aja is an acronym for Autosuficiencia Juntada con Apoyo, meaning supporting self-sufficiency. The Aja Project provides access to innovative, culturally fluent, high-quality arts programming to youth in the most diverse and historically underserved communities of San Diego, ensuring that youth are given the skills and tools needed to use the arts as a vehicle for self-sufficiency. Now, there's a couple of Aja programs that I wanted to mention here. First, this year, Aja has been transforming and pivoting to meet the community's needs during the pandemic. And as part of their ongoing movement to make learning more accessible, they've been offering a series of hands-on workshop boxes from home called STEAM On Demand. If you go to theajaproject.org/store, that's the ajaproject.org/store, you can buy a workshop box that you can do at home. It comes with all the materials you need to complete a hands-on analog photography activity, and it goes along with a virtual online workshop that will help participants learn the process. Right now, they are offering a buy one, donate one program where for each workshop box you purchase for $20 plus shipping, they will donate a box to someone in the community. Or if you make a $500 tax-deductible donation, that will fund boxes for 30 students. Again, go to theajaproject.org/store for the STEAM on-demand workshop boxes. There's a link in the show notes for that. Also, if you're in the San Diego area, the Aja Project has a new program in collaboration with KPBS and Voice of San Diego called Speak City Heights. Speak City Heights Youth Media is a program hosted by the Aja Project through the California Endowment Building Healthy Communities Grant. It matches passionate young storytellers with the resources they need to engage in multimedia participatory community journalism around themes of identity, justice, and liberation. Throughout the course of this 16-week program, participants will gain and develop new skills in documentary practice, such as photography, video, audio, visual arts, and writing, while collaborating alongside creative peers to cultivate a final project that attests to the uniqueness and resilience of the City Heights community. There's a link in the show notes to the application, so if you're between 16 and 24 years of age, and especially if you're a City Heights resident, check that out. And do it quickly, because the application deadline is January 1st. All right, so let's get started. Here's my conversation with Rizzhel Javier. So how are you today?
I'm good. Today, I'm, like usual, pressed for time. I was sewing a lot this morning for a show.
Yeah, you mentioned that you've got a new show coming up. And,
yeah.
So what's that going to be?
It's going to be it's opening this Saturday, and it's at the San Diego Art Institute, and it's part of a group exhibition called Millennial Pink.
Yeah. So that's, can you tell me a little bit about what the like theme is? Like,
yeah. So I was actually approached by the museum, by Lisa, and she had mentioned that she thought that these sewed pieces would work well with the show. I found out later that it's kind of about queer aesthetics and exploring like the boundaries of what's being communicated in this kind of culture through the arts. And so it's really interesting because I never really thought about that as a big part of my work, but it's interesting that she reached out to me, and I don't know that it's a part of it. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's pretty cool. Like, I really like what they've been doing at the Art Institute recently, the past few years. I think they've been doing a lot of really cool exhibitions there. So it sounds pretty awesome.
Yeah, I don't know what it was like before it was the way now, except for things that I've heard from other people. So, it's definitely out there. I love the direction. I love the playfulness. And I think that's why partially I feel so comfortable showing like really different work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I was a little worried when when Ginger left, since she was such a big part of what it's become more recently, that it might change a little. But it's been really heartening to see that they're like just still going full steam ahead and like showing interesting work and doing interesting exhibitions. And I don't know. I think it's a really great resource to have in a town like this.
Yeah, I think that Lisa's been doing a really good job. I just met her this year, and already she's kind of helped me gain this new energy, this new community, along with working with the San Diego Art Institute. She's also started this collective of women of color that are just like, we're starting to meet like every month just to talk about like how we think we're not being represented in museums or in media or in art. And I don't know, I get so used to, I don't know if it's like this for all artists, but you get so used to being in your head and in your own space and in your own studio that you're like, oh, there's so many other people that feel the same things as me, or they're making me think about things that I never thought about before. And it's good. It's making my brain feel like it's working again. Yeah. It's really cool to get the chance to like experience the artistic community a little bit. How many people are participating in that sort of this
group?
collective?
Yeah.
I mean, there's like between 10 and 15, barely anyone that I know. So I've been to one of the meetings, and I think there were like 8 of us there, but I think it's grown since. And I think we're meeting actually this week or next week, and they've already started like, we're going to build a website, we're going to do this. And I'm like, whoa, it's happening so fast. But it's good because all I know is that I feel the energy.
Yeah.
And so it's like ricocheting off of me. And even like working today, I'm like, I have this momentum, like, that I feel like I haven't had in a really long time.
Yeah. It's really great to, I don't know, when things kind of take on a life of their own, and you get to sort of get that charge from interacting with other people. Because like you say, the making of the art itself is usually such a solitary process. Like you say, like, I don't know if everybody feels this way, but it's been my experience that a lot of us do kind of feel that way.
Yeah, I think it works across all mediums, but particularly with photography, you're like in your mind, in your camera, in your viewfinder. If you're working with film, you're in the dark by yourself, not talking because you're concentrating, and there's just a lot of alone time. So it's good to kind of balance that. And I think the older that I get, I'm realizing like, if I really want to survive and I really want to like keep continuing to make art in like a healthy way, that is something that I think everybody needs.
Yeah, definitely. So I wanted to, you mentioned that you're working on this piece specifically for this new exhibition, and then that was kind of reminding me of the piece that. So the last time I saw you, we'd met before this, but the last time I saw you was at the. I don't know how you pronounce it. Basil.
Yeah, I'm calling it CM Curatorial because I don't know. I don't know how to pronounce it either.
the new Contemporaries show at CM Curatorial, and that's in Barrio Logan. And I saw you had a piece there. which I thought was amazing, by the way. I think I said that to you,
Thank you.
At the day, but I thought it was
new,
really cool.
So I'm still figuring out how I feel about it.
Yeah. But that also was, it seemed kind of site specific, at least how it was installed for that exhibition. And I was kind of wondering, like, do you find that you make more work lately that is sort of specifically for an exhibition, or is it like this piece that you're making for this new show that's coming up? You're making it now, and you're making it like for this show, right? So is that something that's kind of more usual for you, or you usually find that you're making stuff, just ahead of time and then presenting it when you have the opportunity?
Well, luckily this year I've had a lot more time to work on personal projects. I am working on these pieces right now for this current show, and I love that drive and pressure of a show. And I already had pieces like, actually, they don't know it yet, but I already had shown them what I was going to submit. And the pieces that I'm bringing today are not those pieces. They're all brand new pieces. And I just, I don't know. I kept thinking about like, why can't I just show what I showed them? They had asked me a couple of months ago, and I think the feeling has passed. Like whatever I was going through at that time, or whatever I was thinking of at that time, it's kind of over. And then I feel like putting this work in the show, like if I had put that work in the show, not like lying, I don't know what the right word is. I just feel like it's over, and I'm in this show, and I feel like I'm talking about something now. I feel like the topic is about now and how people are dealing with things now, and I just had that sense of urgency to, like be up for the last 3 days and sew something, and I don't know if that makes me feel better about putting a piece in there and sharing that with people.
That's really interesting. Like, I remember, so earlier in the year, I think I actually recorded the conversation late last year, but so I was talking to this poet whose name is Jose Olivares, and we were talking about how for him, he needs to, in order to like write a new poem, a lot of times, especially if he's writing from, like a piece that's about a particular like traumatic experience or a really intense emotional experience, that he has to like get some distance from that before he can actually sit down and sort of make the work. And I thought that was interesting because like for me, it's sort of like I can do both sometimes. Like sometimes like I really need to be really immediate in the emotion. Otherwise it doesn't feel urgent and then I can't make the piece anymore. But sometimes like I find that like if it's not, like when I'm too close to it, that then sort of I can't focus on the craft aspect of it. But so it's like really interesting to hear you saying that. Like,
yeah, it's a balance too, because I'm talking about now, but when I like, basically they're like these sewn pieces of, memories from people that I don't speak with anymore. But the stories are all over the place. Some of them are like 10 years old. Some of them are older. Some of them are just like this year. And so, I think the time in which I process things is very random. But I don't know. I don't usually, like when I was going to school, I wasn't really into doing exhibits. And I had a really hard time trying to understand, like, what's the reason why I'm showing this work to people, like, and why do they care? And, now that I just think, like, if I'm going to show something in a museum, I want it to be something that's just meaningful, I guess. And if the feeling has passed, it just feels false. And so, yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it probably sounds not good and not healthy, but I like that feeling of exhaustion. Like when I have a show and I feel like it's up and I'm like, oh yeah, I worked like a week straight on that. And for some reason, it makes me feel more accomplished. And also, I think if I'm getting ready to share something and speak with people about work, I need that time. Like these tapestries, I think it takes me like 3 to 5 hours, depending on how tired I am to finish one of them. And that whole time I'm just thinking, I was kind of in this like meditative state. And I think my profession as being an instructor, it consumes a lot of my time, and it's a way for me to delegate, like, hey, like, you're thinking about something and this is the time, like, now for you.
Yeah. Yeah. There's something, you know, for me, like so we sort of share a background in that we're both sort of photographers. We have an initial starting point with photography as photography, but then I remember when we were talking at the New Contemporary show, you mentioned that sort of like when you were in school, you kind of quickly branched out from that because there wasn't a photography teacher or something like that at your...
Yeah. So actually, when I was in undergrad, so I went to Humboldt State University, I had a couple of photo classes that really focused on like the history of photo. And I think that's what really introduced me to the variety. You know, like at first it's just like, oh, you take a picture and that's like the basis of photo. And then I realized like, oh, you could like use these different chemistries. You could produce different colors. You could use different processes. And so I found photography late undergrad. So I applied to grad school. When I got in, my work was already kind of not like a normal photo. It was like these images on wood. And I remember when they called me to tell me that I got accepted, that they were like, oh yeah, you're in the painting program. And I was like, oh, I think there's a mistake because I don't do paintings. I'm not a painter. And they're like, oh, well, we saw your work and we're confused now because they look like paintings. And I'm like, no, they're photos. And so I think that was like the beginning of like, oh, okay, I'm realizing like, where do I belong in this like photo world, or how does it fit? And so I went there to work with Walter Cotton, and he ended up passing away like a year, maybe a year and a half into the program. And so through him, I was really working on like working in the darkroom. And then when he passed away, a lot of people were like, well, what are you going to do? Like, there's no photo teacher here. And they had asked me like on a serious level, like, do you want to go to a different school? Do you want to try and apply? Do you need a break? And all I knew is that I just wanted to keep making art. And I didn't really want to leave. I had this momentum built up. So they transferred me downstairs from the painting room to the sculpture lab. And I started working with my really good friend and mentor, Richard Keeley. And he taught me just to explore different materials. And I think that's now, I think, the main basis of my work. Like playing with materials, figuring out what they mean to me and how I could use them to communicate. And I don't know if it's like a safe spot thing, but photo seems to always like come in there somewhere. So even if I was working with wood or glass or welding or lots of paper and flip books or whatever, I always had photo in there. And that's why it feels, I think, very strange for this show or this current work where the pictures are not there or they haven't shown up yet. I don't know if they will or not. Yeah.
The reason that I was sort of mentioning where I was sort of going was that, like, I've sort of started in photo also, and then sort of, well, I mean, I sort of more started as a writer, but then as I got more involved in photography, I kept finding myself interested in doing things other than just straight photography, even though like I have so much respect for just straight photography. But the thing that you were saying about when you're spending the time making the piece and, you know, so 3 to 5 hours and it's very meditative, that I always find for myself that I don't really get that feeling when I'm just working on a photograph as a photograph. That like more recently I've been doing artist books, which is very hands-on, right? And like, you know, working with leather or paper or boards or whatever and thread. And that you know, so like the last book that I made, I only made one of them, and like making the final version, just the assembly after I was done planning it and everything and making tests and things like that, it took like maybe about 4 hours for me to sew the thing together and make sure that it was all nice. And that 4 hours went like, just, in a wink, because I was just very in the zone, kind of, like the repetitive motion, or that's not...
It's like a trance.
Yeah. Yeah. There's like a flow to it. That's not something like if I'm just like sitting and screwing around in Photoshop or something, like I never get anything like that. Even when I'm doing something like sequencing a series, like it can get a little bit close, but it's still, I'm a lot more in my head at that point. And it's really, there's something really about manipulating the tools, like the hands-on tools of the bookmaking process, and that really lends itself to that meditative state. That was something, when you were saying that, really, that was what I was thinking of, What do you...
Yeah, I mean, I love the problem-solving aspect of working with new materials. At least for me, the content of my work could be like mentally exhausting. And so, and oftentimes leading me to questions that I can't answer. And which I don't mind, but I need something to balance that. Like I love questions and I love not knowing answers to things, but I think everybody needs that, like, okay, this is a question mark, and then like this other side is like, this is the part of my life that I understand, right? And so when I started doing sculpture, I was like, oh, this is awesome. Like you put two pieces of wood together, and no matter what, when you put the nail here and you hammer it, they're going to be together. Like I don't have to be like, well, is it going to want to be together? Is this going to like, I don't know. It's just a very straight answer, right? It's more logical, like math or something like that. If you cut this piece to fit this piece, when you put them together, they fit. And, so much of my work is about people and how that doesn't happen and how things totally are miscommunicated. And so I think working with materials that kind of let me build help me. It's kind of like a symbolic way of me like building on myself, or building ideas, or building on my thoughts, or working on my thoughts. And I need that balance, I think. So I don't just like stay in my head and in my room or in my studio all day.
Yeah. Oh, that's a really cool way of putting it. I'm gonna have to think about that one for a second.
I mean, like, there's something like refreshing to me, like if something happens to me that hurts like my feelings during the day, I could be like, okay, well, I'm gonna sew. And maybe that's like something that's been like really relaxing for me lately, which is why I've been doing it so much. And I just know, like, when I turn on the sewing machine, no matter what, if I like start sewing, it's like the string goes in the fabric and it keeps moving, and I've like made that achievement for the day. And the process might change a little bit, like how I use the machine or what color string or what color fabric, but I just like, I could rely on it. It's like, if I need that, it's always there, and it does that kind of process. And I like that.
Yeah. That's really cool. I often find there's something both relaxing and kind of tense about making like physical things that, I mean, and maybe this is partially because, I did start photography when I was a teenager. We did darkroom work and stuff like that. But, since I was doing it seriously as an artist, it's been mostly digital. And there's something about digital where you can, like, if you screw something up, then you can just back the change out real easily. But like, if you're working with fabric or wood or leather or something, like, if you mess it up, then you have to start all over again, and that's always... There's like this little sort of tension between like the fear of messing it up and also the sort of relaxingness of the motions that you're making. I don't know if that's making sense.
No. I mean, I'm a fan of the mess ups. I actually enjoy the mistakes more than the finished pieces, and I'm still trying to learn how to like enjoy the time right after something's done. But I think I get so caught up in the process that, right after something's done, I'm like, oh, okay, what's the next thing that I want to do? Or I even find myself, I don't know if it's because I'm becoming more familiar with materials, that I'll start something and then I won't even finish it because I'm like, oh, I already know that I don't like it. And then I like start something new, or I'm like, oh, there's a better solution to this process. And I'm going to do it now instead of finishing something out. And, yeah, it's good. I mean, I think I always take these experiences with me in relation to my own life, and it's like, being able to be a little bit more free with these materials make me feel okay to make mistakes. Like I don't have to do anything perfect as long as I know that I'm processing or thinking about how I did it. And that to me is like more useful. I'm still also trying to get used to calling myself an artist because I'm feeling more like a teacher right now. But, yeah, I'm just trying to like embrace those experiences. And it's like, if I was a student, what would I want myself to learn? It's like, yeah, like make mistakes. Those are like the only ways that people come up with new things and how to become innovative. And like, not that things always have to be new, like, but, I just want to see something I haven't seen before. Yeah.
Yeah. It's so weird. Like so many artists that I know who are making just exceptional, like really resonant work, I feel like there's this hesitance to call themselves the word artist. And I just, and on the one hand, I can relate to that because like I'm hesitant to use that word also. But on the other hand, it's like, where does that come from? Because like you're making art. So like, why
I don't know. I mean, I think it might be for me the respect that I have for the artists that came before me, and I just don't feel like I'm there yet. Yeah. Also, I think I battle back and forth between like, I don't know if there's like a middle profession, but like I love to make art, but I also love to teach, and I do those things kind of simultaneously. But I think because teaching is so, at least for me, it's very intensive, that I feel myself pushing back like a little bit more. And I know still why like art is important and why I think it's, important to give students these voices and these experiences to help them communicate. I think like, okay, well, I still need to be making work because then I'm kind of preaching this process that I'm not participating in. So it's like I go to class and I'm like, hey, you guys, you need to make time, you need to make work, you need to journal, you need to think about these things that we're bringing up in class. And then I like go home and I'm like, I'm going to go to sleep because I'm tired or something like that. And it's like, it doesn't work that way. I need to, I don't know, what's that like self-inflicted struggle, but it's like, I need to also feel like I'm working hard so that if I ask them to work hard, I feel like we're on the same playing field. Yeah. Because I just don't think, there's like a hierarchy in that kind of learning. I think we're all even, like, even if I've been in school longer or even if I'm older than them, I just feel like we should all be working like, hard. Yeah. Do you find, so it sounds like motivation is one way that teaching sort of intersects with your artistic process. Do you find that teaching informs your art or sort of feeds your art in other ways, or? Yeah, I am realizing now, like the more that I look at my work in connection to where I was working at the time, is that I've really, really exercised this like permission to be honest. Which I don't think I was ever being dishonest, but I think I was withholding information, and I think what my students have taught me is that we all learn from each other's experiences. It's like if we keep them kind of hidden, then they don't really serve anyone. And I feel like oftentimes, like for all of the emotion, the time that takes place with that learning, it's like we should share it. and kind of reap the benefits of these experiences instead of like condemn ourselves for like these bad things or scary things that have happened to us. And that's like a different kind of learning that I think is even more important than books. Yeah, I think I loved school and I loved like my GE classes, even like outside of art and everything. But I think these just like real life experiences that oftentimes people don't talk about are really the root of like learning what it's like to be like a human and a person. And that's not covered in school. Yeah. And I am totally like a school baby. Like I went straight from elementary school to middle school, high school, undergrad to graduate school. And I just think like, how did I get through all of that and not learn some of these really like key things?
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm doing right now. And I think that's why teaching is also really important to me, because I just think, how do I include this in classes? Like I'll read my reviews and they're like, oh yeah, Rizzhel, she was my photo teacher, but I did not just learn photo in that class. Or yeah, this wasn't a photo class. This was like a class about life or something like that. And I'm like, I don't know.
Those
I
are
like
the ones you remember too. I remember I had a biology teacher in high school that like, I mean, probably 3/4 of the class was just like life lessons. And he's one of the ones that everybody that went through that school that had his classes, he's like, oh yeah, like I remember Mr. Fletcher. Like I learned a lot from him. Not a lot about biology necessarily, but you know, I'm really glad that I was in his class. Yeah,
it's funny. It's like oftentimes when I hear my students talk about photo, it's like a side note. And they're like, oh yeah. Well, I learned that, but I also, you know, I learned a lot about myself. And
that's what makes the art interesting too, though, right? You know, like if you're like, you know, like photography, like anything, you have to have a reason to be making the work. And if you don't have a, you know, the work comes out of your life. And so if you're not sort of engaged in that and aware of those processes, then how can you really make engaging art?
Yeah. And I think, you know, when students have that struggle, or like, I don't know what to do, then to like have that kind of cross-examination, like, okay, well, we need to kind of take a step back. And it's like, I'm really glad that you know how to use the manual settings on your camera, but, you know, let's, you know, think about what you look at normally during the day, you know, go back to basics.
Yeah. The thing that I, you know, thinking about the work of yours that I have seen, which I always find really, you know, I haven't seen a ton of your work, but like every time I've been to an exhibition that's had a piece or two of yours in it, like those ones sort of tend to stick in my mind a lot, because I feel like there's a thing that, how do I put this? What the work looks like and how some of it might be interactive, like with the flip card ones that I've seen before, or the more recent piece at the New Contemporaries show, like is visually striking and sort of unusual, but that the form of it really supports the sort of emotional aspect of it, which I guess on some level all art is sort of trying to do that, have the form of the art convey something about the theme or the, you know, the emotions under it. But I've always felt like your work really does that very successfully, and so it's one of those things too that I often think to myself, like, gosh, how do people think of stuff like this? Like, you know, because the emotions of it can be something really, you know, familiar, like this most recent piece with the, you know, sewed up sort of letters, all hanging from different types of thread and string and yarn and stuff, right? That where you don't get to see what's written on them, because or you can only see little bits and pieces of some of them because of the way they're folded or sewed together or things like that. But what you see is very, you know, it seemed to me to be about about secrets and about memories, and on some level maybe about regrets. And those are all emotions that are so familiar, and I think familiar to everyone, right? Because they're just part of the human experience. But then the way that you brought all of that into the piece itself was something that is just not, like, I would never have thought of that, right? And I love that, right? When you can find a piece of work that's like, I would never have thought to do this. That's cool, right?
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking back. I had this experience when I was in school, and Dwayne Michaels had come into town. It was actually, he came into town for Medium, but because I was a student at San Diego State at the time, he came to my class to do like a lecture. And during that time, I actually had, there's like when you're in grad school, you have to do like a show when you reach the middle of the program. And I had a show at that time, and I was like, oh my God, Dwayne Michaels is here. I love Dwayne Michaels. Like, I don't know, I need to do something. And so I gave him this photograph at the end of the talk, and I was like, oh, I felt like you've given me so many photos. Like, I need to give you a photo. And he's like, oh, this is interesting. Like, where's your other work? And I was like, I have some work right now in this gallery. And he's like, well, let's go look at it. I'm like, holy shit. Dwayne Michaels is going to come with me to this gallery and look at my work. And at the time, it was like all these self-portraits. And I just remember he's like, if I fucking see one more artist like sad and just like complaining about them being an artist, I'm like so over it. Like, I'm just so completely over it. I just want to know, like, why are you so sad? Like, why are you so upset? And at first, like, I'm like mortified because I'm like, oh my God, this guy that I totally love just like doesn't like my work. And he's like, no, I do like the work. It's just like, there's something there, but you're not giving me everything that I want to know. Like, you've got my attention and then you left me blank, you know? And so that's where I was like, okay, I need to like dive in more. And then I started to realize, okay, the more genuine that I am, like if the more specific that I get with some of these stories, I realized the more that people were responding to me. Like, it made me feel good when I went to shows and they were like, oh, I know how that feels. Yeah. You know, and I think it goes back to kind of like, yeah, like going back to that, like, oh my God, I'm not alone when I think about this, because, yeah, just that process, like being in that hole kind of and working on it. I think you need that alone time, but then you have to somehow pull yourself out of it. And that's the trick. It's like, how do you not get stuck there? Yeah. And then as far as like forms go, I think that's where the logic side, I don't really respond well to logic. I don't, like, I know that it's important, but I just don't think that way. But I know that I need to access some of that when I'm like working, otherwise I'm going to go overboard. I'm going to like kind of deal with this like imbalance. And so I think of all these memories, and then I'm like, well, how do I show, well, then I'm also thinking like, I have these jobs now where I'm outside of the art world. So it's made me think like, how do I show this to a person that needs to see it in a really logical way? So when I think of the drawers, I'm like, okay, like when I have memories, I put them and I organize them in these drawers. And then when I don't like them, I take them out and I throw them away. Or, you know, this one, like after 2 years, it gets a little longer, you know, or I give it more space. Or in some of the drawers, I'm like, maybe this one's not resolved yet. I'm going to leave some room in there. And that to me,
the card catalog piece.
Yeah, the card catalog piece. And for me, that's maybe a way for myself in my mind to see it in a logical way. Because before that, I was like, oh, my mind's like jumbled. I'm trying to save all this stuff. And my brain like literally felt super full. Like I remember feeling like I've reached maximum capacity. Like some of these images, like the wheel has like 1,600 photos. And when I look at those pieces, I also think, man, that all was like in my head at some point. And I'm so glad to like get it out, basically. Yeah. And so, yeah, I don't really know. I'm trying to think like, where did those forms come from? Also, I'm really interested in the process of research. And so I think those were some familiar tools, like going to the card catalog, going to the library, spinning through the Rolodex. They're just like motions, maybe also that seem meditative to me. Like when I open the drawers, like I haven't shown those pieces in a while because every time I show them, everybody touches them. Like they don't just touch them once, right? They touch them over and over and over again, and they get really worn out. Yeah. And so, but there's a comfort in that. Like the technical money side of me is like, oh no, like these aren't going to last very long, and they're so, ephemeral. But then it's like, oh, well, maybe that's the point. Yeah. Like they need to have that like moment where people are really enjoying them, and then it just like passes, just like kind of like the feelings that they're about. So. Yeah.
We should probably take a quick little break and come back and do the second segment.
Okay.
So, all right. So for the second segment, I always invite the guests to bring a topic of their own, which could be anything that you'd like to talk about, whatever's on your mind. So what would you like to talk about today?
I was like talking with my friend last night, and I was trying to decide, but I think the main thing that's been on my mind lately has been the Philippines. And I so rarely have the opportunity to talk about this outside the realm of my family. Yeah, I'm going to just jump on it.
So you're Filipina? Mm-hmm. Okay. I have some cousins that are Filipino or half Filipino, and so it's something that's always been interesting to me.
Are they here in Mira Mesa?
They're not. I'm actually from Northern California, so they live now they're all over the place, but when we grew up, they lived in Salinas. There's actually a fairly sizable Filipino population up there, but it's not like Mira Mesa, but
yeah, I feel like there are so many people coming to California now from the Philippines. So Philippines is kind of like, I just started going there the first time when I was 30. So prior to that, I wouldn't say I didn't acknowledge, but I didn't really think about that part of my culture. And so I guess that happens when you're 30. You're like, I need to do something pivotal right now. And I'm like, I don't know how I feel right now. I quit my job. I left to go to the Philippines for like 3 months. I like scared everyone in my family because they were like, oh my God, what is she doing? I think I was in this job, but I felt like I could have stayed there. And I just had this like very overwhelming, compelling need to like go to the Philippines.
So you're from here, right?
Born and raised San Diego.
Right. I mean, obviously you said that was your first time going. Are your parents from here also?
No, my parents are from the Philippines, but they immigrated here. My dad was in the military. He's probably in like his mid-20s or early 20s when he got here. My mom came with her family. She lived in Virginia, and then she came to California after. Both of them had military connections, which is how they ended up here. The base is like, we live right near the base. But yeah, my parents are born and raised in the Philippines, and they came here, and they basically, my feeling is like they never wanted to go back. And I think that's maybe what started my whole intrigue with the process, because when I realized like, oh my gosh, I don't know this whole part of myself, like I was going to go to the Philippines, and I'm like, I don't know like what my grandma does, like 95% of the year. I just like talk to her occasionally on the phone. And when I started asking my parents questions, the answers were very simple. Oh yeah, well, it was hard. I didn't like it. It was hot. And it's like, like I'm like a research-based person. Like I need more. Like I need to read books. I need to like have like podcasts. I need to have like resources so that I could learn more, because what you're giving me isn't enough, basically. And for whatever reason, the curiosity like really scared them. When I decided that I wanted to go to the Philippines, it was like a huge deal. Like I wanted to go for 6 months, and I kind of had to barter with my dad, where he was like, no, like you shouldn't go at all.
What do you think the like hesitation or the fear was for having you go there? I
would say like the most simple answer is that they think that it's dangerous. The more complicated answer would be maybe they didn't want me to find information out that I wanted to know. I don't know. I'm still like in the process of figuring that out. But yeah, I basically started using these trips to the Philippines as like an anthropological study, like on my family. And so before I had left, me and my dad had gotten in this huge fight, like am I wasting my time or not? You know, like what is the point? And my dad knows me, and he's like, he had mentioned like, oh, you just make some of these decisions sometimes based on emotions. You're such an emotional person, you know, and like it scares me sometimes when you like make these big decisions, and you know, this is the ultimate force. And I'm like, well, you know, sometimes I just feel like I have to like respond to that, though. It's like I wouldn't be like feeling it if it wasn't important. And he said something to me that just really pissed me off, basically, and like made it like, okay, well, I'm going now. And he said, excuse me, you're chasing a history that doesn't belong to you.
Yo.
Yeah, I know. And I was like, did he just say that to my face? And I was like, I couldn't tell, like, is it because he's mad, or is he just trying to get me, like, where he knows it's going to piss me off? And I'm not like a...
Oh my God, I just got chills thinking about it.
I'm just not like a stereotypical, I guess, or I wouldn't say stereotypical. I'm not maybe the daughter that they had pictured. You know, I'll talk back if I feel like I don't agree. And I think that, I don't know if that was like a cut on me just to try to be like, hey, you need to like stay down here or like not feel like you have like too much power or whatever. And I think after, like, immediately after he said that, I was like, I'm fucking going, dude. Like, I don't really care anymore how long I'm going. But now, for whatever reason, my curiosity has spiked. It's like, now I need to know, why can't I go there? And the only way I will find out is just to go. And so it was really hard. Even my grandma was like, you know, he's my son. Like, I don't want to have you in my home against his will, you know? And so I think that's where we arrived to the like almost 3-month stay instead of a 6-month vacation. He thinks it was a vacation, but really it was the beginning of, I think, a really long-term project. So I've been back there 3 times since. I've been going every year, and I've made it this kind of like obsession. My dad describes it as that. He's like, you have this fascination and obsession with this place, and for whatever reason you have to go. And I'm like, okay, fine, I'm just gonna like accept it. It sounds very fun when you say it to me. It doesn't sound as scary or dangerous as maybe he perceives it. And yeah, it's just so interesting because I'm like, why did he, like, I feel like if I had a daughter that was like, oh yeah, I would love to go to the Philippines and want to learn about my culture, I want to spend time with my grandmother and like know what she does on a daily basis, that I would be like, yeah, right on, I'm so glad, like I did a good job, I raised my kid, and she could like think outside of herself, and she thinks of her family and where they came from and how hard they've worked. But that's like, I did not get that. But yeah, I mean, it's good. I think that if it hadn't happened that way, maybe I wouldn't have went.
Yeah.
And then this whole story would be different.
Oh man. There's something, I think a lot of people who come from immigrant or sort of diasporic families, especially when you get a generation or two down the road, oftentimes have this real sort of longing for a connection with that, you know? I mean, I've certainly felt that way myself a lot over the course of my life, where like my family is Japanese, but we've been here, the longest path back to Japan, I'm the 5th generation, and the shortest path, I'm still the 3rd generation. So like, my parents were not born here. My parents were born here. Most of my grandparents were born here, and some of my great grandparents were born here. Right. So I'm pretty far removed from that, but there's still something about the way that it informs identity, part of which has to do with how the society here treats you. Where like, I can't just be American, right? Because even though, like my wife, for example, is white, and her mom is an immigrant from Canada, and her dad was born here, but her dad's parents were not, right? So her family has been here a lot shorter time than mine has, but nobody would question whether she's American, where like people sometimes like even like this still happens to me sometimes where people will like talk at me a little louder, or, you know, not necessarily be sure on first looking at me that I speak English properly.
Yeah, I mean, so many times, like before I actually went to the Philippines, people were like, "Oh yeah, what's it like?" And I was like, "I have no idea.
Yeah,
I can't tell you. I've never been there. I'm like from here."
Yeah, so it's kind of a strange thing where you know you will be sort of put in a box by people here, but you're not necessarily having a direct connection with it yourself. And I find that for me, that's been something like it's been something that has been on my mind from time to time as well. I think that, you know, you said your dad described it as an obsession. I mean, I think that's like really normal for people who are descended from immigrants here.
Yeah, I would even go as far as maybe to describe it as like an innate feeling, you know, like I always kind of thought about it, you know, even as a kid, just like your experience, my experiences growing up. It makes me think of this one picture. I have this photograph when I used to do tap dancing when I was like 3 or 4 years old. And I have this photograph, and I'm the only Asian girl in the photo, and I'm standing in like a group of 10 Jean Benets, like they blonde hair, blue eyes, big hair, like showgirl style. And like every time I look at that photo, I think it was the first photo that made me realize like, oh, photos have like meaning, you know, like, for my mom, it was this image. She probably paid $20 for it. And she's like, I want to remember like what my cute daughter looked like at this age, this dress and the shoes that I bought and the makeup I helped her put on. But then when I look at the image, I'm like, oh my God, this is like a really good account of like how I feel like I felt like growing up, not being surrounded by people that look like me, or maybe always feeling different, or, you know, what kind of expectations did my parents have for me? Like I wanted to be that, or I wanted that, to be my norm, and it never was. And so I think like, yeah, deep down inside, I think it's like it's starting to emerge, I think, in my work now, but I think for the longest time, I felt like I never really had the permission to discuss it, because I had never been to this place where supposedly my ancestors were from, and I didn't really have, I didn't feel comfortable like talking about that yet. And then it started making me think like how many other people feel that way, and it's like, okay, well, I just need to, like, I guess that's my motivation. It's like, maybe I should start talking about that, and maybe there will be more people in this community that will come to light, you know.
It's really that thing that you just said about not feeling like you have permission is, I think, something that a lot of us go through. And I think it's maybe even more common for Asian Americans than other minorities, just because I have found, like, my experience, and obviously, like, Asian Americans are not like a monolithic block, like, you know, what it's like to grow up as a Japanese American versus a Filipino American versus like a Vietnamese American. They're not the same experience, and there's different cultures coming through. But what I have found seems to be common, at least in my experience, is that like we don't, as a group, seem to be quite as comfortable talking about race as some other people are. And so I've just found a lot of people that I've talked to who are Asian artists have a certain reluctance to make work about Asianness or about immigrantness or about like any aspect of that touches on race. Like there's some discomfort there.
Yeah, I think
I certainly feel that way.
I think that at least for me, it's scary to be an example.
Yeah.
I guess. And so, I went to Humboldt State, and at the time, I started going to school there in 2002, where there are basically no people of color. Like, I got approached. I remember like walking across like the school, and some guy's like, "Hey, do you want to be like the president of the Filipino club?" And I'm like, "Is there a Filipino club here? Like, who's in it?" And he's like, "You'd be the first member." And I was just like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, that was the first time. Like, living in this place was the first time that I really realized that I was Asian. Because I grew up in San Diego. I mean, I still feel like my high school experience was very segregated, but we knew of each other, like these different groups. And yeah, when I went there, it was just really like lots of staring, like really just straight up staring. And I was like, okay, this is good, because now I'm realizing how different I feel here. And I remember when I first started doing photo classes, it had come up. I used things like fans, or I was really also inspired by Iko Hosoi and like this Japanese photographer and his style of printing. And I don't know, for some reason it looked very exotic to people. And so the first couple critiques, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like the person of color. Like, it wasn't even an Asian thing. It was just like, okay, we're going to use her for an example of everything that has to deal with race. And I was like, I don't know if I'm prepared. Like, I'm not prepared to like talk about this like on a large scale level, and to be like the representative for all Filipinos or all Asians or all people of color in this community where everybody is just so far away from that. Like, I had met people at that school that were like, I've never seen an Asian person before. And I was like, I'm really glad. I was like, to the point of like, look at my face. Like, please, like, look at my face. Like, I just want you to have this like experience, because to me, it's just like blasphemy for some reason. And maybe it was also me trying to come to terms with like, I'm only going to make it weirder if I kind of absorb it as like, oh my God, like, what kind of person are you? You haven't seen an Asian person before. Yeah. Like, I think I'm like, okay, well, I should be an educator. It's like, well, instead of like making them feel weird, it's like, well, what do you want to know?
Yeah.
And I'm a lot like you.
Still California, right? It's like a state school in California.
Yeah, I mean, it's much different now. Like, I've been back there to visit, and I think a lot of people that come up from the Bay like go up there now. So it's not the same. But yeah, I just remember this feeling like ethnic studies was kind of a new thing back then. Yeah. Women's studies was a new thing. And I walked out of class one day, and this girl was like, I'm so sorry for what my people did to your people. And I was like, I was like so confused, because I was like, what did we talk about in class today? And I was like, we were talking about Native American history. I was like, I don't know. Like, I think it scared me, you know, like when
it's an awkward place to be, because it's like that, you know, a person only is doing that because on some level they want you to forgive them. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I felt sad for her, you know. I was like, she's like processing this information, and I'm totally trying to like also be there with her. But I'm like, how do I? Yeah, I mean, I didn't say. Yeah, I didn't say anything. Really, I was just like, oh, thank you, like. But it did bring this awareness, you know, and maybe it's good that I'm thinking about it now. Maybe like 10 years ago, I wasn't prepared, but I think I could talk about it now. Yeah.
When it touches on the thing that you were saying before about specificity. Because I think that's another thing, this thing that you were saying about, you know, wanting to be a representative, or you know, not wanting to feel like that, because, you know, like people are gonna, like, if a piece takes off, or your work takes off, and that's what it's about, then, you know, a lot of people are going to hold you up as some kind of, you know, spokesperson for, you know, all Filipino people, or all Asian people, or all people of color, or whatever, right? And that's a very uncomfortable place to be. But, and I think I've talked to a lot of people about that. It's certainly one of the things that has always been sort of at the forefront of my anxieties about making race-related work, that that feeling a pressure to have to deal with the fact that if the work took off, that people would hold me up as some kind of example, but also knowing that like a lot of people, even who would be broadly similar to me, like who might be, you know, Japanese American in California who is many generations down the road, would still find my life experience to be very different from theirs and not representative of their experience, and feeling like, well, you know, I can't be a representative for everyone, right? That's a tough place to be. But I think like the thing you were saying about specificity, it makes it, that's the thing, right? Is that you can always talk about your own story, right? Or at least I feel like.
Yeah, I think like, I mean, what's most important for me is like that a dialogue starts, you know, and I think it's never easy talking about things that you don't normally talk about.
Yeah.
But I think if people could get past that hump, then it's like, okay, good. We've arrived to this place where we could at least talk like normal people. And it just makes the process a lot less daunting to me, you know, where it's like the work I think about now, it's like things that I don't say to people. Yeah. And it's like, well, if I just like said it more, then maybe it wouldn't be so hard to say all the time. Yeah. I guess one of the things like going back to like, oh yeah, would I call myself an artist? It's like, my perception also of an artist, like if I were to put myself in that situation, like, hey, okay, I am Filipino and I am in this position where I can be representative for this group. It's like, do I just do it? You know, like also as an artist, do I carry the responsibility to be like, okay, there aren't that many examples. Like going to school, I didn't have like other Filipino artists that I was like researching because I couldn't really find them. I'm just finding them more recently now that I've been going to the Philippines and visiting museums and stuff there. But I was like, maybe a job of an artist is to serve as an example, you know, and like maybe that means just like in a lot of situations that you're doing things that you don't necessarily, it's not that I don't want to do it, but that it's hard, you know, and that, yeah, being an artist isn't an easy thing. Yeah. Yeah. And I think that kind of accepting that kind of responsibility is what also brings maybe makes me think of that transition of like artist as a profession versus artist as a hobby. Yeah. And yeah, I'm learning about that, and I think that it is a profession, and maybe I'm transitioning there, and I'm going through those growing pains right now.
Yeah. I mean, sort of figuring out your relationship to the work and how that impacts your identity, how you think about yourself. I think that's sort of a lifelong process, or at least I hope it is.
Well, also like the things that you make aren't always, they don't have to be things that you always agree with, but they're things that you think about, you know, and I think having that freedom to explore those things just like the way that I would explore with materials, it's like, that's a good thing. Yeah. You know, then I don't feel so much pressure of like, what I say or what I do is wrong or right. Yeah. It's just like, oh, I'm just thinking and I'm processing things kind of out loud by making these things. And I guess that's why people make art, because they're like, I'm going to make it instead of talking about it first. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a tricky thing trying to sort of balance the feeling that the weight of feeling a certain responsibility to do a thing, and to do it well, with also, you know, that can be an opportunity, but it can also be a really heavy burden sometimes. But I think that's something that I've wrestled with at times as well. Feeling a sort of simultaneously feeling a responsibility to do something, but also feeling how the way that I was going to say this just flew out of my head. Feeling a responsibility to do something, which oftentimes for me has a sort of resistance to it, where it's like, if I feel like I have to do something, then I don't want to do it. But then also feeling like, but I do want to do this. This is an opportunity for me to do this. There's a sort of, I don't know, push-pull to it.
Yeah, I mean, I think the push and pull is important, especially, I think it's important for artists to think about why they're making things and then in what context they're showing things. Mm-hmm. Because, there's a difference. It's like, you could just make art and like keep it at home, mm-hmm. you know, like if it's really just for you. But if you're going to put it in a show and you're going to put it out there, that's for me where I have like a problem. Like, I want to know why it's important for this community to see it. Mm-hmm. What kind of impact is this person like trying to make? Because we can see a lot of really pretty things like on the computer or mm-hmm. like, you know, when we go to the park or like, I feel like this institution, it's, you know, it's, there's a bigger purpose for it, right? And so, I think it's good to be a little bit more critical about what it is you're going to do with these little pieces of you, like after you make them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's real easy to sometimes feel like that the thing that you're doing has a sort of selfishness to it. And I guess it could actually be that way. Although when I think about other people's work, I very rarely feel like other people's work that is sort of, you know, talking about whatever aspect of their own experience, as long as it feels honest, it never feels selfish. You know, the only time work ever really feels selfish to me is if it feels like it's exploitive in some way, where if it's like, I don't know, I mean, a lot of people have different opinions about what's his name, Richard Prince, but you know, that's a whole other thing. But you know, when stuff is personal, often it just feels generous to me. You know,
that's good. It makes me feel a lot better because I totally feel like so like, oh my God, I'm so in my head all the time, and I am greedy with my time because all I want to do is like stay home and work on my own stuff. But yeah, I think that's where I like try to go inside my head and then I like do like community outreach. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of this stuff is becoming also kind of like a public engagement. Like I thought like, okay, well, I'm like going through all these stories, but now I'm curious, like what are the other stories that people are coming up with? Mm. And so like one of the things that I've done is like I have a survey online where I've had people just like anonymously like tell me these stories mm-hmm. and I'm going to start transcripting those two into pieces. And I thought like, oh yeah, like it doesn't have to just be about me, or I don't know, like maybe when people saw them or when people see them, they don't necessarily even think of me. I'm not sure. But yeah, I think that public engagement is really important because then it starts to bring it full circle to me. And maybe in a lot of ways it makes me feel less selfish, right? Mm-hmm. It's like, oh, I'm processing all of this stuff for me, but it's like, oh, no, I want to share the information and my findings and my research. You know, that's like how education works, right? I feel like it's useless if you learn something and then you don't tell anybody, you don't share anything, right? And so, yeah, I think really thinking about the purpose or figuring out why I need to share it has helped me come to terms with like, okay, maybe I should show my work in public spaces.
Even if it is very, very, you know, inwardly directed, or, you know, if it is just about how you are processing a thing, or, you know, I'll say it in terms of myself. Like, I feel like if a lot of the work that I make is often about, you know, really personal things that are, you know, me trying to grapple with a certain experience or emotion that I've had. And it doesn't necessarily include something that's outside of myself, like somebody else's experiences or research or anything like that. But I still feel like there can be a value to like that seeing someone else, how they process something, that can be very useful in knowing how you process the same thing or something similar. That I think there's a real utility to that. you know, or at least, you know, that's what I tell myself when I'm making my own work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it really goes back down to that root of just like, oh, it feels really good not to like tackle that battle alone. Or if you did, that you're like, oh, someone did it too, and they're like, okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that it just opens doors. I just thought it made me think of like this one kid. I went back to Humboldt to do an artist talk, and I think it was like 10 years after the first time I had ever taken my first photo class. And I looked at this kid and I was like, I sat in that exact chair like 10 years ago, and I probably asked like the same questions, you know, that you're asking. And he came up to me after class and he was like, I don't even know you. And he's like, I'm just so glad that you're here, because I told my mom the other day that I wanted to be an art major. And she just was like, that's not going to happen. And I look at you and I'm like, you were really honest. And you said like, you don't necessarily, you know, like you're doing art, you're trying to figure out what you want to do about work, you're moving around. And he's like, it doesn't seem impossible. You know, you're just like an example to me now. It's like, and I don't know, I was thinking like, man, if I had that when I went to school, maybe I wouldn't have been so scared to kind of jump off the ledge.
Yeah.
You know, and like I'm thinking now it's like, I'm not that much, I'm still pretty young, I'm 33, but I'm like, oh, now is like, it's not, I don't feel as scared to maybe try and start over or to do something new. Like I caught myself a little bit early, and then I think like, I thought about that kid and I was like, oh yeah, I'm glad that I could do that for him. And yeah, maybe, yeah, in a lot of ways, recognizing that helped me be brave too.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. What?
No, I think that like, I wish we could all have an experience like that, you know? I think that's really great.
Yeah, it was good. So my teacher gave him a piece, and it was like a very like a weird feeling, because it's like, oh, like, what do you say when someone's like, you've made an impression on my life? And I'm like, oh yeah, that's good. Like, I'm really glad. Like I was saying before, it's like some of my experiences or misfortunes or like lessons that I've learned, like they exist for this guy now. You know, like it takes a little bit of stress off his back, and kind of makes me see how useful that experience is now. You know, it's like not a bad thing. It's a good thing, because now this kid is like doing something different than what.
And that can be so helpful. And like, I mean, it's obviously, I mean, as he said, helpful to him, but also the fact that he was able to tell you about this is like that. I find that that's very sustaining for me. That, you know, a lot of times I might question, like, what is the point of all of this? Why am I spending so much time and effort and money making all this stuff? Is there any reason for it? And like, you know, having one interaction like that you can go back to later is something that you can be like, that's something that you can hold on to. Like, I don't get to have that very often, but like, I can remember every time that someone has said something like that to me. And when I'm feeling really sort of in a dark place about my work or my role in making the work, like I can go back to that and be like, you know what, this mattered. It mattered to that person. And even if it didn't matter to anybody else, like that was something real, and that was something that I can hang on to. Yeah.
I mean, I really respond to like little things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was good.
Yeah. So, I could probably keep going for a long time, but we should probably move towards the end. The last question that I ask everyone is, whether there has been a piece of art or literature or just general creativity that you've experienced recently that meant something to you.
Yeah, actually, so a couple of weekends ago, I had just gone camping. I went to Mexico and camped at Laguna Hansen. I've never camped like on that side before. And I was thinking of like these little tintypes that my friends made. I went with my friend Barb and my friend Julio, and Barb is like a friend from like 10 years ago from grad school, and then Julio is just someone that I just met recently from the CM curatorial show. And it was just like such a special moment for me, because I had like someone new and someone old doing something that I just really love. I went out and we took my portable darkroom with me, and I showed them how to do tintyping. And it like revived me. I don't know, like my friend Barb is a metalsmith, and so she knows really not too much about photo. I think she took photo like once when she was an undergrad, and then to see her just like after, like boom, 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 she's like, this one wasn't good, I want to do it again. She learned how to use a camera that day. She learned how to use all the chemistry. Julio's more familiar with the photo world, but he was also like really brand new to the process. And I love the like willingness to learn. And yeah, it's like not really that often that I could share those kinds of things with, my friends that aren't necessarily into photo, you know, and, to be able to take people into my world and share a little bit about, just like some very weird knowledge that I know. It's like not that many people know how to do these kinds of processes, and it's like, I don't know, it just reminded me of how special it was.
Yeah.
You know, when you're doing it alone in your studio, or if you're used to all the equipment, you know, like my friend Barb had even made a point like, oh, you know where everything goes and you know where everything is. And I was like, oh yeah, I do know that, don't I? It was just like so second nature at some point. And then, yeah, just to have that like span of like, of new friendships and old friendships, and then having them get to know each other. And then, I don't know, it was just a really special thing. And I love doing that kind of stuff. Like I've been doing that a lot, like going camping and bringing my friends and doing photo stuff. And I'm realizing more and more that those are such just enriching experiences, and that, yeah, we should be doing it more often.
Yeah. All right. Well, so thank you so much for talking with me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for coming over. And yeah, I look forward to hearing it.
Okay. As I mentioned at the top of the show, there are links in the show notes to the Aja Project's Steam on-demand workshop boxes and to the application for Speak City Heights. Do check those out. Finally, I just want to say from me to you, thank you for being here. Getting to have these conversations and share them with you is such a nourishing thing for me, and I hope that it's been that for you as well. So here's looking forward to 2021 and hoping that the year is full of creativity and conversation for all of us. And that is our show. Editing and mixing on this episode is by me, the music is by Poddington Bear, and transcription help on this episode is by Shea Aguinaldo. If you found this show interesting or uplifting or useful, I hope you'll leave a review on Podchaser or Apple Podcasts. There are links in the show notes for both. And you can find all of the rest of the show's social media information, email newsletter, show notes, and transcripts at keepthechanneleopen.com. Next time, we'll be kicking off 2021 with a conversation with poet Kazim Ali about his latest collection, The Voice of Sheila Chandra. That will be coming on January 13th, so stay tuned for that. And until then, remember, keep the channel open.